Hi Trace, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. So, quick overview of kind of where we're at with things.
Okay.
I'm Jess Jensen with the Morrison Center. I do case management, as you know.
Yeah.
And I have worked with the Morrison Center for a few years. We provide a wide variety of services for people with cognitive and physical disabilities, both residentially and also community support-wise. Currently, I am doing case management, which is kind of how we met a little bit.
Right.
This is our second meeting, correct?
Yeah.
The first meeting we had.
It went very well.
Good, I'm glad you feel that way. Before we get started a little bit, I just kind of wanted to go over this with you a little bit, and it's kind of, it's just informed consent.
Okay.
Basically, when you're entering any kind of counseling or getting any kind of assistance with case management or any kind of assistance,
Right.
we're basically entering an agreement, basically, that anything that you say to me is considered confidential. We don't go through, I don't share this stuff with anybody.
Right.
You know, it talks about who I am, Jessica Jensen with the Morrison Center. Our appointment today is approximately going to take a half an hour. And when you're entering any counseling, it's a big decision. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to go through them and answer them. Any barriers or anything that you're running into that you just need some help with.
Okay.
Talks about the confidentiality, obviously.
Yeah.
We won't discuss this with anybody else. Kind of, we're entering kind of an agreement. Emergency situations, what we do, what the policies are if we run into an emergency.
Right.
Talk about HIPAA corporate compliance,
Yep.
all those kind of things.
Yep.
So if you'd like to take a minute and just
Okay.
kind of review that,
Okay,
and then I'll
sure.
have you sign it,
Okay, sure.
and then we can continue on with our session.
Okay, sounds good.
Also, just kind of recapping a little bit, if there's any changes or anything like that, I will notify you. We'll talk about it, and when we make our plans and stuff, I'll have everything kind of written out and go over it with you.
Okay.
Like when we make the treatment plan of how we're
Okay.
going to proceed from here,
Yep.
I'll go over all that
Right.
stuff with you.
Okay, sounds good.
Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so last time at our meeting, Tracy, we talked about you having kind of some issues with a coworker.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, we talked about, you know, the coworker wasn't being really honest, felt like they were kind of ripping the company off,
Oh, yeah.
and you
Yeah.
didn't know where to go from there.
Right.
Now, do you remember kind of where our plan was at the end of that meeting, where we were going from there?
I was going to sit down with the supervisor and come up with some different scenarios of like how we approach the person.
Okay.
So basically from there, we haven't had the meeting yet, so I'm just trying to get her input and then go from there.
Gotcha. So you did take those steps. You sat
Oh,
down with your supervisor and
Yeah.
kind of went over some of the things that we had talked about for ideas?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And did you find that helpful?
It did help. It didn't have it. It felt like it didn't have it all on my shoulders, so I got her input. Sometimes, like if you have it all on your shoulders, that you get tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to think outside the box of like different scenarios of coming up with to how to approach this person.
Sure, brainstorming is
Right,
huge.
Right.
Especially, like you
Yeah.
said, kind of in the heat of that moment when you're feeling kind of overwhelmed and all you can see is that one issue and there's no resolution. It can be incredibly
Right.
like overwhelming.
Yep.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we kind of went through those steps. That went really well.
Yeah,
You had a
yeah.
meeting with your supervisor.
Right. Yep.
Now we're kind of regrouping and gonna see where to go with some of those suggestions.
Yep. We're thinking about sitting down with her, pulling her in, sit down with her, and you know, kind of at the forefront of just throwing it out there of saying, you know, what's happening, what's bothering, some like different steps that she can take as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just throwing her under the bus. It's just, you know, is she in need of help? Because the reason, like marking down time that she's not even there,
Right.
Is there something that we can take up donations for? Is she going through a tough time? You know, different scenarios like that as well.
Wow, Tracy, I think that's really great that you're kind of thinking outside of the box and you're coming at it in less of a personal attack.
Right.
Last time it kind of, if I understood you, you kind of were like taking it personal.
Yes.
And this time you're kind of like, hey, look, you know, we all have issues.
Yep.
How can we get proactive? How can we help you through this?
Right.
That's awesome. That's really great. So are there any barriers that you can see you personally running into that I can help you with, that we can kind of make some...
The only thing that I can think of is like, I don't know how she's going to perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's anything that you could help me through of like how we could, you know,
approach her.
Like some approachable ideas maybe.
I think, so you're, one of the barriers that you're concerned about, if I'm hearing you correctly, is how she's going to see you when you sit down with her and discuss this. You don't want to come at her in a confrontational, attacking way, but these issues need to be addressed.
Right.
Okay, so we can absolutely talk about that. I think one of the things that I would suggest, you know, is just being honest. I mean, what you said to me, Tracy, was great.
Yep.
Look, are you having a hard time? How can I help you? What can I do to support you through this in a way that is going to be ethical and honest? And just leading with being honest with her and saying, you know, I want to work with you on this, but we have to work on these other issues.
Right.
How does that sound?
It sounds, you know, okay.
In that moment, though, it can be like,
Yeah, it can, like, anxiety, that's the only thing, but it's something that needs to be dealt with, and I know that, and the best bet is to be upfront and honest, and rather than beating around the bush about it.
Right.
So.
Okay, so we can come up with some different approaches.
Yeah.
On how we can, maybe some different ways we can word approaching her, because you're saying that you want to respond and you don't want to react,
right,
and that you want a resolution to this in a way that's as least confrontational, and in a dignified and respectful way,
right.
Which is commendable, Tracy. You know, especially being her supervisor, knowing the way that it looks right now is she's kind of ripping the company off.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so some other ways, some other things. Let's explore some other areas, some and different techniques that we can use to kind of do that. So you yourself have a little bit of anxiety about talking to her about it. Did you find that those were alleviated when you talked with your supervisor about it?
It did, but it's just like, I think it's just in the moment thing, like when, like knowing how is she gonna respond, you know what I mean? Is she gonna attack, you know, in an attackful way, because she has in the past, like, attacking manner, and like her voice starts, you know, raising and all of that stuff.
That can be hard.
So it's just trying to, you know, keep the team together, but help her if she has any needs.
So what are some ways do you think that you could respond to her if you feel like she's kind of coming at you in that attacking way?
I think, like, if my boss and myself, we bounce off from one another, you know, if we can see that coming, of like, you know, how you always add in like a positive in there, you know, on top of like after you just gave a negative, like add a positive.
Yeah.
You know, like saying her support's great, and but we had noticed, you know, that this is happening. Maybe it's just a mistake completely. Maybe she didn't know that she did that.
Right.
So it's just trying to find that out.
Okay.
So I think if we add in some positives as well, not, you know, making the whole meeting out to be negative.
Right.
And then if she knows that we have her back, of like, if she needed help or support, she can just ask, rather than, you know, writing time down that, you know, it looks to us like she's taking from the agency. So
I definitely think you have some really great points there, and adding in those positive and reinforcing those positive attributes and those positive things that she's doing is going to be kind of important as you find, you know, that this could be an uncomfortable conversation. I think that I would suggest, you know, us sitting down and kind of writing out some different things for you
Right.
to feel comfortable and confident with, some different,
yeah.
and maybe do a little bit of role playing
Mhm. Yeah,
so that
would actually
you
be good
in
too.
the moment are feeling like, okay, you know, Jess is going to come at me and or not come at me, but you know, we
Right,
can role
right.
play different scenarios. This is
Yeah.
what it may look like if she is not receptive. This is what it may
Right.
look like. So you're not felt like you're being caught off guard.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I really think that, you know, you're so genuine and so sincere in your approach that if you just stick with that and go with her with a look, this is uncomfortable for all of us. We have to deal with the situation. I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you. I don't
Right.
want you to feel like, you know, I don't trust you. We have to come up with a resolution.
Right.
So,
Right.
and we can work together to do that.
Mhm.
Okay. So, let's just recap it a little bit to make sure
Okay.
we're both on the same page, okay? So we're gonna do some role playing,
Yeah.
throw some different scenarios at
Yeah.
you that will help you rehearse or kind of go over
Mhm.
what may or may not happen to help with some nerves.
Right. Right.
We're going to highlight some of her good points,
Mhm.
like you had suggested, doing some positives while we're kind of throwing in what may be perceived as negative.
Right. Right.
And then we're gonna get this ready so when you sit down and you have the meeting with her and your supervisor,
Yeah.
you have some kind of points,
Yeah.
and you're maybe not going to feel as caught off guard.
Right. Okay.
Does that sound?
Yeah. That sounds fair.
Now, is there any other barriers that you could see that you may run into that we can work in our plan, in our treatment plan moving forward to try and resolve this?
I can't think of anything right at the moment. It's just basically like wonder if she, you know, thinks that we're ganging up on her. You know what I mean? But I think with that positive reinforcement
Mhm.
and then knowing that we're there to help her through, if she needs anything, she's more than welcome to ask rather than, because that could be taken as like false documentation,
Right.
ripping off the company. So maybe it will just, go as is,
Mhm.
that's what I'm hoping. But I mean, you never know what you're getting into, the different personalities
Right.
and that type of thing. So I think at like some point of like the listening, the best thing to do is to sit back and listen
Yep.
and see where she's coming from as well.
And two, try not to take anything personal.
Right.
You know, it can be very difficult, but when people are feeling like they're being attacked or,
Yeah.
things are coming up against them, then they can, go into on the defense, and and it's not personal. And you
Right.
certainly are not responsible for the way that she responds.
Right. Yep.
So I think that if we just moving forward, if we come up with some scenarios, do a little bit of role playing,
Yeah.
write down some of the key points that you think would be good to highlight for her with those positive notes, and then get you ready for that meeting. And I'm anxious to hear how it goes.
Sounds good.
Does that sound good?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.